The amazing influence of Old Hollywood on Australian architecture. Between the First and Second World Wars, Australia's high-end architecture was strongly influenced by exotic scenery from Hollywood's rapidly accelerating movie industry. Southern California's style of seductive glamour and decadent hedonism see recalling the sun-blessed heydays of Roman emperors and Mughal sultans see especially inspired developers and designers of lavish cinemas, mansions, blocks of flats and leisure gardens with swimming pools. Sydney's Potts Point Peninsula was a crucible of this trend, especially after music publishing mogul Frank Albert hired English architect Neville Hampson to create his splendid residence Boomerang, facing Elizabeth Bay. In 1924, Hampson and Albert visited Los Angeles to find ideas from the best of Hollywood. The pinnacle then was La Cuesta Encantada, a vast hilltop estate that media magnate William Randolph Hearst was developing in Spanish, Italian and French neoclassical styles, with architect-engineer Julia Morgan. Their own version of Hearst's castle included the Baroque cathedral-inspired Casa Grande, 3 large guest houses, and the most sumptuous swimming pool on earth. When Wilkinson founded the University of Sydney's Faculty of Architecture in 1919, he strongly criticized the ornamental features and complex roofs typical of the waning arts and crafts movement. Instead, he promoted a Mediterranean mode of relaxed, sun-responsive elegance, based on the work of Spain, of southern Italy, of Provence, with, perhaps, a little of the Orientalism of northern Africa. He also praised Los Angeles updates of West Coast Spanish missions, with their adobe walls, arched arcades, timber beam ceilings, and rounded terracotta roof tiles, as a delightful and appropriate style of building. This aligned his 1920s Australian clique to the medley of Spanish-Mediterranean styles that were embraced by Hollywood property developers, architects and newly rich stars from the silent films industry. During the interwar decades, many mansions, villas, bungalows, and blocks of flats were built in Spanish-Italian Renaissance styles, often combined with flat roof, low proportions, and curved corners from the then new streamlined modern movement. Typical features were center-opening French doors, curved Juliet balconies and columned porticos, colonial-style windows, loggias and arcades, piazza-inspired courtyards, and ceremonial staircases rising around entry foyers. Outstanding Sydney examples included Wilkinson's own villa, Greenway, in Vauxhall, Burnham Thorpe, and many other palatial North Shore residences by Frederick Lynn Gillen, G. and Craig Inn in Darling Point by Frank Irons T. L. Anson Bloomfield. 2 other Hollywood Mediterranean standouts were the Lodge in Canberra, by Melbourne architects Percy Oakley and Stanley Parks, and Pine Hill at Frankston, Victoria, by Sydney architects Prevost Spanish-Mediterranean. Both of these cream-painted, terracotta-roofed mansions shared the same first occupants, Prime Minister Stanley Melbourne Bruce and his family, as well as residences. Spanish-Mediterranean styles were adopted for various new types of buildings, especially blocks of flats, petrol stations, car showrooms, hotels and shopping centers, and beach pavilions for new surf life-saving clubs, notably the Bondi Pavilion by Robertson Marks. Spanish aesthetics also suited Catholic schools and churches, such as St. Columba's in South Perth, and crematoria for modern funerals. 2 superb cremation complexes were designed by Frank Bloomfield at Sydney's Rookwood and Northern Suburbs Memorial Gardens. Australia's most spectacular interpretations of Mediterranean architecture were the atmospheric cinemas designed by Henry Eli White and other Antipodean acolytes of John Eberson, America's leading interwar architect of theaters and opera houses. Atmospheric interiors tended to feature extravagant ornamentation, scenic low-oil paintwork and dramatic lighting effects that lent audiences the fantasy of spending a starry night watching performances in the courtyard of Granada's Alhambra Palace. His over-the-top decor influenced Hollywood scenery styles that seemed sophisticated and exotic in the mid-20th century, but today are often described as camp and kitsch. White, a New Zealander, set up his practice in Sydney in 1913 and expanded his career on both sides of the Tasman during the 1920s. Historian Ross Thorne revealed that White worked with Eberson on Sydney's Capitol and State theatres. He also designed the Palais Athenaeum and New Princess Theatres in Melbourne, the Civic in Newcastle, and Winter Gardens in Ipswich. Rockhampton and Townsville. Spanish-Mediterranean architecture was well suited to Australia as post-Federation culture because it gave a more exotic flavor than the Colonial Georgian revival that accompanied the reigns of Kings George V and George VI from 1910 to 1952. And it connected Australia to the exhilarating, glamorous spirit of Hollywood in the Roaring Twenties. Now that Australia's own Hollywood-aligned film culture is prospering, these vintage architectural icons remain alluring. This is an edited excerpt from Australian Architecture, A History, by Davina Jackson, published by Alan Unwin. Davina Jackson is an honorary academic, School of Architecture and Planning at the University of Kent. This article is republished from the conversation under a Creative Commons license. Read the original article.